Yeah, the Oracle's mission is going after one of the most important questions in understanding the Earth's climate system, which is how does stuff we burn affect how clouds form?
Yeah, and it's really cool because in these intricate missions, you have so many team members who put in so much effort to make it happen.
Yeah, like most people think, oh, it's just a bunch of scientists, right? But you've got everything from mechanics that are keeping the plane flying, to the technicians tweaking all the instruments, all the way even through to the people who are doing things like getting the data together and putting it up on the web.
Yeah, and then you also have science writers like me, and then you have your copy editors, and like you're saying, your IT specialists. It's all this information, and we have to make it understandable for the public. And then you also have the people who have to take care of the people in the field with accommodations and the food and the toilet paper and everything that they need.
Yeah, it's a big team, and you got to take care of them.
It is, and actually, one of my favorite team members doesn't have a pulse. It's actually the Coral Mission's G4. So let's go check in and fly like a G4.
Like we said before, NASA airborne science is all over the world, and we've got a mission continuing in the frozen north, checking out the melting glaciers of Greenland, flying out of Keflavik, Iceland. Team OMG.
I'm Josh Willis. I'm a climate scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and right now I'm in Keflavik, Iceland, in front of the Gulf Stream 3, which we're using to conduct a survey for oceans melting Greenland. We have a series of points laid out where we would like to collect data, and by and large, we fly over those points and drop when we're right above them. However, in some places where ice or clouds are a factor, we relocate our points in order to find open water that's clear, where we know we're not dropping on top of a ship or anything, and we're able to drop through an area without sea ice. So in fact, when we have to change quickly because there's sea ice conditions or clouds in our drop point, we look out the window and look for places where we see clear open water and clear skies just above it, and we drop in those. So the team is sometimes targeting in real time, trying to find places that are close to our original planned drops, but not quite there. We've set up 4 different primary locations for collecting the observations for OMG. Because of the range of the aircraft and the way the survey plan spreads out the ocean measurements, we really have to operate out of bases that are nearby and collect data that is not too long a trip for the plane. If we spend a lot of fuel flying out and flying back, then that means we have less fuel to actually drop the probes and collect data. So we've partitioned Greenland essentially into 4 pieces, north and south and east and west. We began by surveying the southwest part of Greenland, and we operated out of Kangerlussuaq. We also dropped some probes on the way over when we flew from Bangor, Maine to Kangerlussuaq. So we flew from Bangor to Kanger. So the Kangerlussuaq was a very interesting place, but we were able to operate out of there for several days and really complete a large chunk of the southwest part of the survey, dropping several dozen probes over the course of 3 or 4 days. After picking up about 50 probes from Thule, we flew to Svalbard, Norway, a small island off the northeast coast of Greenland. From there, we were able to complete the northeast part of the survey, at least the parts that weren't covered with ice, and then flying across the northern edge of Greenland and surveying along the northern coast of Greenland on our way back to Thule. Then we spent several days in Thule, completing the northwest part of the survey, before yesterday flying right across the Greenland ice sheet to Iceland and landing here in Keflavik. We've set out a very ambitious plan here with the goal of dropping 250 probes in about a month. We're a little over halfway right now. We've dropped 150. We have 100 left to go and about 2 weeks left to do it in. So we're definitely beginning to feel the time crunch, but I'm confident that we can have a really excellent survey with just a number of good weather days if we can get them. Hey, Tom and Kasia, I hope you enjoyed this little tour of oceans melting Greenland. I'm Josh Willis. OMG, back to you guys.
Hey, thanks, Josh. Those guys got to see some pretty amazing stuff, huh?
Yeah, it inspired us to come outside, and it's not exactly Greenland, but it's still pretty beautiful.
Yeah, but you know, it's also a good example. Imagine coming to a place like this with like a team of 24 scientists and an airplane.
I can't. And then you have all these things that you can't control, like the weather, or if like your engine fails or something like that.
Yeah, like science sometimes is just like an exercise and just keep trying, keep fixing, and keep moving on.
Perseverance.
Hey, well, that's all for us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Earth Expeditions.
And go outside and create your own Earth expedition.
Hi folks, this is Brian May and this is NASA TV taking us out into the solar system and beyond. Rock on.
Guaranteed to blow your mind.
Sensation on Space to Ground.
No shortage of smoke and fire this week. Welcome to Space to Ground. I'm Dan Hewitt. Orbital ATK kicked things off with their triumphant return to the Wallops Flight Facility. The company packed its 6th Cygnus cargo craft with more than 5,100 pounds of science and supplies for the International Space Station crew. Then it was time to roll out the new version of its Antares rocket to Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, being used for the first time since a failure in October 2014. The rocket engines roared to life Monday evening and lit up the night sky with a flawless ascent, one visible from up and down the East Coast. Now in orbit, Cygnus will loiter until October 23rd, when it will arrive to be grappled by Kate Rubins and Takuya Onishi. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, the next station crew is readying for liftoff. NASA's Shane Kimbrough and cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Andrei Borisenko underwent final preparations for their launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The trio went through their final checkouts while their rocket and spacecraft were once again mated and rolled out to the pad. This was attempt number 2 for this launch, which was previously postponed from September so engineers could fix an issue with the Soyuz. But everything lined up on Wednesday for a spectacular show. The crew suited up in the morning, waved goodbye to family, friends, and co-workers, then made the hike to the top of the rocket. The Soyuz lifted off on a cold and cloudy day in Baikonur and completed the 9-minute climb to orbit. The 3 crew members are spending 2 days chasing down the station so they can conduct control tests and maneuvers in their new version of the Soyuz, the MS-02. Once they arrive on Friday, they'll dock to the Poisk module and the station will be back at full strength. Keep sending in your questions using the hashtag #SpaceToGround. We'll see you next week.
I was about 18, I decided to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point for my college experience. It was even more than I ever expected. It was much more difficult, which usually doesn't sound like a good thing, but when you get through something like that, you really feel like you've accomplished something. The bonds I made, the skills I learned about discipline, about loyalty, about honor, integrity, teamwork, those kind of core Army values were instilled early on and throughout my 4 years there. And little did I know, all that training was really getting me prepared to be an astronaut and to be, have the traits that NASA was looking for. And I continued to develop this theme of being a positive role model for people, mentoring the newer folks in our office and trying to help them develop as they get their skills ready to go fly in space for the first time. I've also really taken an interest in the youth in our area, coaching sports teams and working with youth groups at church, and being able to invest my time and energy into them has really been a passion of mine over the last several years. I'm Shane Kimbrough, and I'm an astronaut. So I'll start off with, I went to elementary school in a place called Erlangen, Germany. So that's something that folks probably don't know about me. Let's see, I was childhood friends with Julia Roberts in middle school and high school years in Smyrna, Georgia, which is where we grew up. It was Julie back then, but it's Julia now. And let's see, I'm a U.S. Army jump master. So most people know that I'm an Apache pilot from the Army. So it's kind of a unique combination to be able to be a jump master, which means I'm jumping out of airplanes and actually, being in charge of all the jumps. So all the other jumpers that are going out of the airplane, you're the one that's responsible for them. So I'm not sure if folks know it or not, but I really love sports. So I played and coached baseball, basketball, football, golf. I'll pretty much play anything sports-wise. So I love watching sports on TV. So I definitely will miss that when I'm up on the space station, not getting to have kind of college football and NFL football going on all the time like I do here on Earth. So that'll be interesting. All right, I guess the last thing, I have a passion for teaching youth, and mainly at our church. My wife and I have been lucky enough over the past 6-7 years to teach high schoolers and really invest in the next generation of kids that are going to be our future leaders. So it's been fun, really rewarding experience.
Hey, NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman.
Hey.
Do you think you have a few minutes to answer everything about living in space?
I got all the time in the world.
Awesome. Well, where are we?
We are in the Space Vehicle Mock-Up Facility. It's a gigantic building at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. And this is where astronauts spend the bulk of their time training for spaceflight.
Is this the window where you took all of those really cool pictures of Earth?
This is the cupola. It's a series of 7 windows that look down on the Earth.
Nice. How big is the International Space Station?
They say it's about the size of a 5-bedroom house. It's kind of hard for me to conceptualize. In reality, it's just really narrow and really long.
How long did you have to train before going to the ISS?
About 5 years.
And how many total days have you spent in space?
165.
What's the record?
Jeff Williams, he has the U.S. record, 534 days in space. But Russian cosmonaut Gennady Padalka, almost 1,000.
Wow. What's a groundbreaking experiment that you completed aboard the ISS?
I survived.
I heard you age faster in space?
Maybe a little bit.
Is there a maximum height or age that you have to be to become an astronaut?
We used to have restrictions on that, but now it's pretty much come one, come all.
Is there Wi-Fi?
There is, but it's not as good as it is on Earth.
How do you get in contact with people on the ground?
We have space-to-ground communication systems. It's basically a radio or a walkie-talkie, and we just call on this and say hi to Houston.
Is there a delay?
Almost none.
How did you get to the station?
A rocket.
How long did it take for you to get from Earth to the space station?
It takes about 6 hours.
And how long did it take for you to get back?
Oh, that's a crazy ride. It's about 3 hours long.
Any jet lag?
Horrible jet lag.
How often do you get to talk to your family?
Get to talk to them once a week.
Ever prank call anyone?
Of course you prank call people.
Ever get homesick?
Yeah, you get homesick a little bit.
So are the beds comfy?
There are no beds.
I heard you have to be strapped to a wall.
You do?
Are you claustrophobic?
A little bit.
What else can you do in your room besides sleep?
You can read, watch TV, do some work, whatever you want.
Do you have a bedtime?
Everybody has a bedtime.
Do you have alarm clocks?
I use my watch.
How many crew members do you have?
It was me and 5 others.
Were there any language barriers?
Doc and Yeshna, of course there were language barriers.
Ever get sick of your roommates?
No, you never get sick of your roommates.
What did you do in your free time?
Oh, you look out the window.
What's a typical breakfast aboard the space station?
It was very much like a breakfast on Earth, so I liked eggs, occasional oatmeal, maybe even a waffle.
Was the food any good?
I actually thought the food was pretty good.
What's your favorite meal on the station?
I love chocolate pudding cake.
How do you cook your food?
You can either inject it with hot water or put it in a food warmer.
What's the first thing that you ate when you got back to Earth?
I really wanted a pizza, but I saw a salad and went for it.
So did you have to work out?
You work out twice a day for about 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours.
And what kinds of exercises?
Primarily, you're either lifting weights or running on the treadmill. Our treadmill is attached to the wall, and so when you're on it, you're running straight down towards Earth. Very weird feeling.
So how do you stay on the treadmill without floating away?
Bungee cords.
So do you burn the same amount of calories as you do on Earth?
I think you burn a little bit more because your brain is always active.
I heard that in microgravity, sweat sticks to you.
It does. If you have hair, it kind of builds up in your hair and you get this big sweat bubble on your head.
How do you shower?
We have soap impregnated towels.
How do you pee in space?
Ooh. We have a funnel.
Where does your pee go after you flush?
A little bit of processing and then right back into the drinking water.
How do you pee in a spacesuit?
We have a diaper.
How much water do you have to drink each day?
You drink just about the same that you would on Earth.
Do you ever run out of anything?
Free time.
How do you get more supplies?
We have cargo ships. We have great companies like SpaceX, Orbital. We have Russian resupply vehicles and also Japanese HTV spacecraft.
What'd you miss most on Earth?
Oh, my wife and kids.
What personal items did you take with you?
Photos of my wife and kids.
Did you bring any space souvenirs home?
You always have to bring souvenirs home for your kids.
So I have to ask, what's your favorite planet?
Oh, it used to be Saturn until I saw Earth from space.
And if you were to travel anywhere in the solar system, where would you go?
I work at NASA. We all want to go to Mars.
Does the space station ever get too hot or too cold?
Oh, we keep it a balmy 72 all year round.
Nice. How about the temperature of space?
Plus 200F to minus 200F.
What about the temperature inside the spacesuit?
It's actually pretty warm, pretty nice, pretty comfortable because there's many layers of thermal protection.
How much does a spacesuit weigh?
Oh, it's really heavy. I think it's about 300 pounds.
How do you do your laundry?
We throw it out.
Do you have to clean the spacesuits?
Of course you got to clean the spacesuits, especially after a spacewalk.
How long does it take for you to put on a spacesuit?
About 45 minutes.
Can you put it on by yourself?
If you're in a pinch, you can put it on by yourself.
How long does a spacewalk normally take?
We train for about 6.5 hours.
And what's the max amount of time a spacewalk can last?
The maximum is about 9 hours. I think 8 hours and 54 minutes is our record.
How's the view?
Awesome.
What's the hardest thing about a spacewalk?
Just knowing that you're outside, and if you mess anything up, you've destroyed a $100 billion spacecraft.
And what's the most rewarding?
Coming back.
Sounds awesome. Well, I'm sure there are a lot more questions, but I know you're busy, so we'll save those for another time.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a good one.
See ya.
Passing 30,000 feet. Engines remain nominal. SU4 pressures.
Crowd watching the launch at Wallops there, cheering its liftoff. We're now 1 minute and 30 seconds into flight. Another minute and a half to, or 2 minutes to go until the first main engine cutoff, coming at 3 minutes and 28 seconds, but everything proceeding as expected in today's flight.
Pressure, main engine systems, EPC remain nominal. So nominal, we're about 90 seconds from MECO at this point. Attitude remains nominal. passing 100,000 feet in altitude. Stage 1 systems continue to perform very well. Vehicle attitude is nominal. Engines and core pressure remain nominal at this point. Avionics systems continue to look good. Healthy power systems.
2.5 minutes into flight, less than or just over a minute left to go before that main engine cuts off.
Altitude just passing 200,000 feet. Attitude remains nominal. We started our slow throttle transition. Attitude and core pressures remain nominal. Roughly 30 seconds to main engine cutoff. Velocity is 10,000 feet per second. Engines is throttled back to 55% power. Altitude 300,000 feet. TVC skew for MECO is initiated. Attitude remains nominal. Engines remain nominal. And we have main engine cutoff.
Rob Navius, NASA TV for Shane. Virtually all of your time on orbit with your crewmates will be spent as the crew of Expedition 50. After 16 years of a permanent human occupancy aboard the station and 50 expeditions in, what is the most impressive aspect of the station that will mark its place in history?
Very good question, Rob, as usual. But it's a tough one to answer because there's so many incredible things coming out of the space station. Like you mentioned, just having people on board the space station or anywhere off the planet for 16 continuous years is amazing in itself. The research and science we're doing now is just phenomenal. But I think to answer your question, probably the greatest thing in my mind that's coming out of this is how our nations work together internationally with many different countries are coming to make this incredible laboratory in space actually happen. And I think we're going to need these partnerships as we head off into the future to do things like potentially Mars or asteroids or go back to the moon. So I think the partnership is the greatest thing we can pull out of this. We can learn from it. We don't do it always right, but we can certainly learn from what we're doing now and get better as we progress into the future.
Я решила все-таки задать еще один вам вопрос. I decided to ask you another question. Командировкой с каждым пилотируемым пуском на Байконур приезжает все больше туристов.
Trip with each launch from Baikonur, more and more tourists come for a visit here. What do you think? How do you feel sharing all these secrets? It used to be a restricted access area, completely restricted. So what do you like? What do you not like? It's a question to all the crew members.
Если людям нравится, что запрещать, конечно, с удовольствием.
Of course, we enjoy having tourists here. You see, our U.S. colleagues have such an expressions as a report to taxpayers. You see, the flight to space, our feelings, our experiences, emotions, we understand that unfortunately, not everyone will be able to experience it. The government pays for us to fly to space, taxpayers. So we would like to share and explain why it is such a great thing. Thank you very much. So I would like to ask the Prime Crew to pose in front of the GCDC emblem.
Dr. David Newman, NASA's Deputy Administrator here in Baikonur for the launch of the Expedition 4950 crew. We're just weeks away from the 16th anniversary of a permanent human occupancy on the International Space Station. What does that say? What is the legacy of that in terms of the strength of the partnership and how that partnership provides a springboard for future exploration?
It's really amazing. International Space Station, 16 years. I like to say any 16-year-old or younger, their entire lifetime, we've had humanity living on International Space Station. The partnership couldn't be stronger with the 5 main partners, NASA, Russia, Japan, Canada, and the European Space Agency. All of us working, living 24/7 in space together. We think it's really a great model and a great stepping stone for the future of space exploration as well. We've just passed 95 different nations having contributed science experiments and technology demonstrations. So we really like to say the world is with us, living off the Earth for the Earth.
And the space station itself, with all of the hundreds of hours of research being conducted, how it's matured over the course of time. What does that mean in terms of future exploration, breaking out of low Earth orbit, and what lies ahead for exploration?
International Space Station really is phase 1 of our journey to Mars. So we are well on our ways, closer than humanity has ever been to sending humans to Mars. On International Space Station for 16 years, every mission is about 250 science experiments. We're really looking at the technology development, buying down those risks, and next, and in parallel, our Space Launch System will launch Exploration Mission 1 in 2018. So International Space Station, low Earth orbit, and then we push off into Earth-Moon orbit, test down those technologies, and for the 2020s, the shakedown cruises, and then by the 2030s, we will accomplish Mars orbit and getting boots on Mars. So it's really an amazing, 3-part journey to Mars, and International Space Station in these past 16 years have really taught us everything we need to know to continue exploring and moving further out in the solar system.
Launch command issued for ignition. Second umbilical tower separates.
The second umbilical tower has retracted. You can see the engines firing now, going up to flight speed and liftoff. Shane Kimbrough, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Andrei Borisenko blasting off from Kazakhstan, making their way towards the International Space Station.
15 seconds.
Getting good calls from the teams out of Bike, looking nominal.
Hello, this is your host from Astronomy VIDS. Hope you are enjoying the live stream. Continue.
Those 4 strap-on boosters and single-core engine.
Humans to Mars on International Space Station for 16
members, which are now rocketing over the Kazakh steppe. The first stage going up to flight speed, length at 24 feet in diameter. It's going to be burning Shane Kimbrough, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Andrei 6 seconds blasting off from Kazakhstan, making their way towards the International Space Station.
15 seconds.
Getting 7 good calls from the teams out of Bike, now looking nominal 1 hour.
Hello, this is your host from Astronomy VIDS. Hope you are enjoying the live
The next
stream.
major milestone will those 4 strap-on boosters and single-core engine.
humans.
Astronomy VIDS, all about space. Hope you like the live stream.
Sensation on space to ground.
No shortage of smoke and fire this week. Welcome to Space to Ground. I'm Dan Hewitt. Orbital ATK kicked things off with their triumphant return to the Wallops Flight Facility. The company packed its 6th Cygnus cargo craft with more than 5,100 pounds of science and supplies for the International Space Station crew. Then it was time to roll out the new version of its Antares rocket to Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, being used for the first time since a failure in October 2014. The rocket engines roared to life Monday evening and lit up the night sky with a flawless ascent, one visible from up and down the East Coast. Now in orbit, Cygnus will loiter until October 23rd, when it will arrive to be grappled by Kate Rubins and Takuya Onishi. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, the next station crew is readying for liftoff. NASA's Shane Kimbrough and cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Andrei Borisenko underwent final preparations for their launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The trio went through their final checkouts while their rocket and spacecraft were once again mated and rolled out to the pad. This was attempt number 2 for this launch, which was previously postponed from September so engineers could fix an issue with the Soyuz. But everything lined up on Wednesday for a spectacular show. The crew suited up in the morning, waved goodbye to family, friends, and co-workers, then made the hike to the top of the rocket. The Soyuz lifted off on a cold and cloudy day in Baikonur and completed the 9-minute climb to orbit. The 3 crew members are spending 2 days chasing down the station so they can conduct control tests and maneuvers in their new version of the Soyuz, the MS-02. Once they arrive on Friday, they'll dock to the Poisk module and the station will be back at full strength. Keep sending in your questions using the hashtag #SpaceToGround. We'll see you next week.